Alright, welcome to my tutorial. I've been playing Simutrans for a few years now, and I decided to make some tutorial videos to cover some of the basic concepts of the gameplay and some of the more advanced concepts of the gameplay that make it really enjoyable and that are really kind of core concepts that help you really progress and have a successful transportation company throughout the game. So this video is going to focus on trains, but a lot of the concepts are easily relatable to other modes of transport, like monorails or ships or planes or what have you. And the two topics I'm going to cover are stations and signals, which I think are two very core concepts that there's lots of tutorials out there, but I haven't found any that really kind of cover it in the right amount of detail or explain things kind of adequately. Feel free to leave any comments you have or any suggestions or things you find helpful related to either of these two subjects or subjects you think that I should try to cover as well. On my YouTube page, I do have a couple of videos of some of the creations I have in Simutrans that are I primarily use the Pack 128 with a bunch of add-ons. So there's lots of people who make add-ons out there. A lot of them from the Pack 128 Japan version as well. So I like to mix a lot of that. This tutorial, however, is just going to use the basic Pack 128 to keep things pretty simple. Alright, so the two topics again for this video are stations and signals. Alright, so stations. Train stations are obviously the destinations that your trains are going to be going to in Simutrans, but what exactly constitutes a train station? I found this a little bit confusing when I first got into the game, and some tutorials really kind of helped me understand it a little bit better. But basically the train stations are when you have the platform tiles on the tracks and they're placed contiguously. But they can also include any freestanding buildings. So if you have a warehouse building next to a train station, or a passenger hall, or also if you have other modes of transit next to a train station. So if you have a bus stop next to a train station, or a train station next to an airport, or a shipyard, or whatever, then it all constitutes a single station in the game. And if it's a single station, then passengers can transfer from a bus that stops at that station to a train that goes to that station, or goods can be dropped off from trucks at that station and picked up by a train later on. So, in this example, we're going to create a simple coal train. So there's a coal power plant here, a coal power station, and there's two nearby coal mines. So we're going to create a simple line to deliver coal to this coal station. So you just go to the menu and you select the railroad tools. So I'm going to pick the pretty basic and easy track. So first we'll start at the actual coal station to lay down the track. One helpful tip is you can hold down the control key on the keyboard. That'll, when you drag the tracks, that'll keep things straight. Otherwise it may try to, especially if I wanted to do double track here, if I don't hold down control, it might want to kind of blend the tracks together. But holding down control will keep things separate for you. So I've laid down my track, and this is going to be for cargo, for goods. So I'm going to get a goods platform, click it on, and as soon as I do that, it gives me a name, Nottingham Coal Power Station. Nottingham is a nearby town here, I guess. So I'm going to click on a couple of platforms there. And we have the coal mine here. And we're just going to drag the tracks over to it to make a simple connection. And the same thing, I'm going to put down some, let me extend this a little bit longer. Alright, and for any vehicles you obviously need a depot, so we'll make a depot. So I'm going to set up a coal train to go from here, so I'm going to choose a locomotive. and when you click on it, it tells you it produces a bulk good. So we need to make a train that can carry that. So if you go to cars, you'll see these types of cars here which can carry bulk goods. So one thing to keep in mind whenever you make a train or any type of vehicle, when you create it at a depot, it tells you the length of the vehicle or the length of your convoy based on the number of tiles. So this says that this vehicle takes up a space of 3 station tiles. If I keep adding to it, it'll go higher. Now the 2 stops that I made are 4 tiles, so I wouldn't want to make any trains that are larger than 4 tiles, or else it'll be bigger than the station, and it won't be able to effectively discharge all of its cargo or fully load up with cargo if it's longer than the station that it's going to. So one thing to keep in mind is that as you develop a rail network, you want to keep in mind the length of all of your vehicles and the length of your platform. So one idea is what I usually do is keep a uniform length. So if I'm playing a large map, I'm gonna decide that all my trains are gonna be 8 tiles long or 6 tiles long, or if I'm really ambitious, 12 tiles long or whatever. But keeping that in mind, if you keep it uniform, then as you add on to your network, you don't have to think, oh man, how many tiles long is that station? Oh, that train's not going to fit, so I need to increase the length of that station, or I need to reduce the size of my train or something like that. And it also factors into signals, which we'll get into a little bit after this. Alright, so I have this train. I'm going to create a new line. It's going to go from the coal mine to the coal power station, and we're going to kick it off. So here it pops out of the depot, and the little meter there tells me that there's some cargo there waiting to be picked up. It loads up with the cargo and it's off to deliver it to the coal power station. Alright, so it looks like there's also another coal mine here, so we're going to link that up as well. It's a little tight that way. We'll go this way. And we'll add some cargo tiles there. So it's also important to note what type of platform you're making. So this supports cargo. Some of these support passengers only. So if you pick a passenger platform and add it to your stop, but you're only carrying cargo, then it's not going to fill properly with the cargo. It basically won't be compatible. It'll only be for passengers. Alright, so this guy's trucking along. I'm going to add another depot here. Keeping in mind the maximum number of length. If you add too many, you can always click and get rid of one, and it'll go back to the depot, and you can go to sell mode to sell it back to the system there. Alright, so we'll create a line for this guy. It'll go from there to here. And we're off. So now we have 2 freight trains, both delivering both delivering coal to the power station here. Alright, so let's say I wanted to add a passenger line. So this, early on in the game, as you start off, you're probably going to want to be thrifty. It costs not only to build the rails and to purchase the vehicles, but also you pay maintenance on the rails and on the platforms and everything in the game. So usually when you start off, you're going to be pretty thrifty. So if I'm starting off here, I'm probably going to want to use these same rails. So let's say if I was going to make a passenger line to go from this city here, Bangor, up to this one here, Nottingham. What I'd want to do is, in this instance, early on in the game, I'm going to save some cash, and I'm going to have it use the same rails that this current the current freight trains use. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to just build a connection up here. And since it's for passengers, I'm going to pick a passenger station. Alright, here we already have a platform for this particular city. I could choose to make a completely different stop, or I could make one that's adjacent to an existing one, so let's do that. In my master scheme of things, I'm going to create a bus line for Bangor, which will take passengers from within the city to this station here where they can catch a passenger train to go to the other city. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another platform here. And I'm going to make it for passengers. So this looks like fun. And notice as I add the platforms, it just becomes one station here. So one thing to be careful of is the order in which you add the platform. So for example, let's say I was getting ambitious and I wanted this to be a 3-platform station. I'm running out of room here a little bit. But for this example, it should be fine. So let's say I wanted to add a 3rd platform there. So I'll just make them all contiguous. However, if instead I started on the outer platform, it's going to make another stop. So since it's not touching an existing bit of infrastructure that's on the existing stop, it's automatically going to register that as a new stop, which may be okay. However, if I wanted to increase my platforms, if I was making it also a cargo stop or something like that, where trains were going to exchange cargo at this station, then I may not get the results that I want because it's treating it as a totally different station. It's definitely important if you're planning to have passengers or something transfer to a station. Just be mindful if it starts popping up with the new name for the station, it's a separate station. So I'll go back to my original plan here and add that. So one thing to keep in mind is the coverage. So if you hit V on the keyboard, right now the coverage of the station, or the reach of the station, isn't very far. It's only really hitting this particular house. So in terms of a passenger station, this isn't going to be very effective in terms of the zone of which it can take on passengers. But we'll address that a little bit later as we add a bus line to it. Alright, so I created the passenger station down there, and I've already created it up here. So I'm going to go to the depot, and let's see. We're going to pick a passenger train here, something pretty small. I'm going to create a new line to go from here. And you know what, I'm going to have it stop at the power station as well. And go to the top station. I'll have it stop here on the way back. And basically the line will reset. So it'll go from, if you right click on the names of the stations in a schedule or in a line, it'll take you to those locations. So it'll go from this station to the power station to the top station, back to the power station, and then the whole thing restarts with the top one again. Alright, so However, at the power station, I didn't add anything to the power station to make it accept passengers. So that's going to be a little bit problematic here. So this platform can only work for cargo. But if I go to my special construction tools, what I can do is I can pick this wonderful country station. And as long as I build it touching any of the existing infrastructure that I have for the station, it'll allow me to build it. I can't just click anywhere to build the add-on. So I built that, so now this station is also going to work for passengers. Alright, so back to this. And back to the line that we have. So made a little bit of a mistake here. I'm actually going to make it stop on this platform instead of that one. Alright, so now it's going to stop on this new platform that I made here and follow the line as expected. Alright, so we're going to start the train and let's see what happens. Alright, so there it is. Alright, there it is. But it's not going anywhere. If I mouse over it, it says that it's waiting for clearance. Alright, so what does that mean? Well, that means that right now this is just a single track from point A to point B. And as long as someone else is occupying it, it can't go anywhere. If you hit the letter lowercase b on the keyboard, it shows you what part of the track is reserved. So the trains in the game will reserve the track ahead of them, and when they reserve the track ahead of them, no other trains can go on that track, and it can't reserve the track ahead of it if there's another train occupying it. So the train that's in the station here can't go anywhere because this freight train has already reserved that track. So it has to wait until that train is done before it can now reserve the track and then utilize the rails itself. And so now the other train left its area, so now everything's turned red here and up, so this train beat it to it. So how can we fix this? Signals. This is where signals come in as an important part of the game, and it can be a little bit much to grasp at first, but it's a very simple concept, and hopefully I'll try to cover it and make it as clear as possible. So like I said, when trains move through the game, they want to reserve the track ahead of them. And they pretty much reserve the track in blocks, where by default a block is going to be, if a train's at a station, the block is from where it currently is in the station up to the next station. If you don't have any signals, the block is going to be the track that it needs to get from its current station to the next station. So for example, for this guy, it's from this station to this station. There's no intermediate signals that break that up. So we're going to use signals to break up the track into segments so that the trains can share the same segment of track, basically. Alright, so we're going to, in order for that to really happen, they're going to need a place where they can either pass each other, or in an ideal situation, there's going to be, two rails where one train can travel in one direction and one can travel in the other direction. The signals are also going to allow us to dictate what the directional flow of traffic is going to be for the rails. Alright, so I'm going to actually pause it for a second here. So I've got the track tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a passing siding in up here. So I'm going to just draw an extension here. And I'm going to go to the regular block signal. When you click down a signal, when it first makes it, it's a bidirectional signal, which I pretty much never use in the game. I always make sure they're directional. So I'm gonna click it. If you click it multiple times, it'll switch sides and switch directionality. The version of Simutrans I have is set up for right-handed driving on the right side of the road. So I'm gonna treat this track as trains traveling in this direction, and this track for trains traveling in this direction. So I'm gonna do that by clicking and making the signal appear on the right. So if it's appearing on the right, that dictates that this block of track is going to be in that direction. Alright, so I've made a simple area where the two trains are going to be able to pass each other, or they'll reserve the track up until the next signal. So in between this station and this station, now the track it's been split up into two blocks, from here to this signal, and then from this signal to the station. Similarly, from the station to this signal, and that signal to the bottom station. So let's unpause and let's see what happens here. So I'll hit B to turn the reservation back on, so we can see what the trains are doing here. Alright, so it looks like out of the gate here, the passenger train now has its chance. And this guy is now going to be waiting for clearance. And when you click on the train, it'll also tell you how much in the way of goods it has. So it's still waiting, it's waiting. So that train went that way. It's cleared that signal. So now this train can now go. And it's gonna go and wait to that signal until its next block of track is free. And so now the passenger train has reserved the track up to its final station. But now the freight train at the bottom here is also waiting for clearance. So it wants to use this segment of the track. And it couldn't as long as the other train had reserved it. Alright, so we have some room for further improvement here. So we have more trains that want to be able to share this segment here. Typically a good idea is to have signals placed before a station so that if multiple trains are going to the same station, they can share the track much more easily there. So let's do this. Alright, now the freight train at the bottom has its chance now to leave and also get to the station. And so that train length that I talked about before, the platform length, in this example I've chosen 4 as my magic number. So also if I'm going to really continue to develop this map, I'm going to use that as the magic number to place my signals apart from. So if let's say I got to the point where I fully made this for two-way traffic there, I would probably have all my signals spaced at a length of 4 tiles apart. And it sounds like it might be really tedious to do, but the game makes it very easy. If you click on the signal and you hold down Control, that's what that number 2 there is saying. So if I click that up to 4, then that would make it even better. So what we're going to do is we're going to make most of the initial stretch here completely double tracked up until the station here. Alright. So we're going to get rid of these bits. Oh, I just broke it. Alright, so I have that signal. I'm going to count out four tiles, and then if I just drag it down, it'll replace any of the intermediate signals that I've already made. That may not be spaced as well. And oh, it's exactly the right size on that side for what I need. So 1, 2, 3, 4 away from the edge of the station there. And if you drag it along, it will automatically space them that far apart. In this example, there's 3 trains, so it's not really that much traffic. And a much more developed game, it could be a very different picture where you have lots of trains going through a certain area, and if you can break the track up into much smaller segments, you're going to be able to share the track much more efficiently. Or else you'll, with the opposite extreme being what we had before I put any signals down, where a train had to wait all the way at the station down here for the other train to get to its station, and then it could finally leave and potentially pass each other at the one siding that we set up. Alright, so let's talk about another important type of signal, the choose signal. The choose signal here, the platform choose signal, it's helpful when you have a station like this one at the end of the line that maybe multiple trains go to. So we're gonna put one of those down here. What this will do is when the train gets to this signal, it'll try to go to the platform you told it to go to in its schedule. If that platform is occupied, it'll automatically pick another platform at this station to go to. So for example, I'm going to create a new freight train here, and we'll talk about one other feature. So I'm going to pick one of these guys. It's pretty much going to have the same line, but it's going to go from this platform to the coal power station. But a lot of times for freight trains, you're going to want them to fill themselves up completely, especially with a long trip ahead of them. So here you can say what the minimum load should be. So for this one, I want it to fill up completely before leaving the station. So I'm going to tell it to start. And now it's going to sit there and it's telling me how much it's loading, so I can click on it further and it tells me exactly how many tons of cargo it's being loaded with. So this is going to sit here and wait until it's completely full. But there's only 2 platforms here, so when the other train gets here, it's gonna, when the original freight train gets here, it's gonna want to go to this platform. That's what I told it to in its schedule. But the choose signal will allow it to pick another platform. So when using the choose signal, you want to make sure that you have enough total platforms at your station to accommodate any trains that you may tell to wait. So for example, I've told 1 train to wait here, but I know 3 trains go here. Well, that should be okay. So if 1 train is waiting, hogging one of the platforms, the other trains, neither of the other 2 trains are programmed to wait. They're going to go to the station and leave immediately. So as long as there's 1 free platform, that's fine. If I put 2 trains here and told them both to load, then we'll have a problem because both of the platforms will be full, or potentially full, and the other trains are just going to be waiting and waiting and waiting. So always just make sure you have enough. So here it came to the signal and it automatically chose a platform. We could do something similar for the coal power station here in the middle. We could add another platform, and put up a chew signal. I typically stay away from doing chew signals for inline stations. So for stations at the end, I'm usually okay with that. Where if it's at the end, if a train is going there, that means it's stopping at that station. If it's in the middle of a network, it could be a little bit more dicey. Right now, all the trains I have are stopping at the coal power station, so putting up a chew signal shouldn't be too difficult. However, if I eventually made an express train that went from this city at the bottom to the city at the top, where I didn't want it to stop at that station, then the chew signal could be a little bit problematic, where it's going to get to that signal and it's going to want to find an available platform at the station here at the far end, and if there's other traffic in between those 2 points, it's going to wait here at this station for a free path to its destination, which could hold up traffic on the network. So typically using the choose, for me, I typically stay away from using the choose platform signal for any station that's in the middle of a network, unless I know for certain that all the trains I have are going to stop at that station. Otherwise, it can create quite a bit of an issue, especially if the next stop is, on the other side of the map or somewhere much further down. There's also the notion of the yellow pre-signals. The yellow basically a regular signal means if it's green, go through. If it's red, stop and wait. If there's a train ahead of you or the block ahead of you is currently occupied. The pre-signals are similar, but they operate a little bit differently. The pre-signal means that when you get to this signal, don't proceed unless the signal after this is also clear. So that I use this typically if I have a main line. I try to set up an example somewhere on the map here, where in this part of the map I have the gray tracks kind of representing a main line that I have, and then I have some freight line that may be crossing it, where I'm gonna use a pre-signal here so that if a train gets to this point and it needs to get to this point, for example, when it gets to this pre-signal, it's not going to proceed unless the next signal in its path is also okay to pass. That way, if it's coming across this main line here, it's not going to stop. There's always the chance if you're at a signal then the track ahead of you is busy, so I wouldn't want it to stop blocking the tracks between this main line and this branch line. I don't want it to proceed unless this signal is also clear. And in theory, I'm placing all of my signals where a train can fit in between any 2 given signals. So there's no trains that should be bigger than the distance between 2 signals here. But if you're at an intersection like this, that could be the case, where maybe if I have a train of length 4, it gets here, it may kind of overlap the distance between the next 2 signals, and it could potentially create a traffic jam, especially near a train station. In reality, in a situation like this, I would probably eliminate this. I did this as the public utility person. I'd probably eliminate this signal here and this signal and reposition it so that stop is right before the intersection, so that trains aren't stopping and blocking intersection. So that's the other thing to keep in mind when you're putting down the signals. You have to place them smartly so that you don't create traffic jams, or you'll get the much unwanted message of "I'm stuck," which, if your trains get to a point where they can't make it to their destination, either the track is broken or something like that, it'll say it's stuck. It can't proceed. I think that's pretty much covers what I want to cover. So just kind of in review, for signals, the signals are going to break up your tracks so that multiple trains can share the same tracks most efficiently. Alright, so now to kind of continue on, we're gonna add a bus system to this little city here. So, there's a couple ways we can go about it, but basically we need a bus stop to be in contact with the station that we already have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it on this side of the city. So I'm going to build a little bridge over the tracks here. So I'll build the roadway all the way up to the edge of the tracks. And then on this side, I'll make a little bridge. Ta-da! And then add a bus stop. So this one looks like fun. And we'll put it right there. And like I said before, it didn't pop up with a different name. Like if I put it here, oh, that's still adjacent to it. If I put it here, then that would treat it as a separate stop. But we want to make sure it's adjacent to our existing station here to treat it all as one stop. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place a couple of bus stops in this town here. So one there would be good. One right in front of, City Hall. This pyramid looks like it might be a lot of fun. Got some people camping out there, it looks like. Another one in the town square. And then over the bridge before we get back to the train station. Alright, so I need a depot there. I'll make a new line. The line will start at the train station. And we'll just select all the stops that are here. That's all. And we'll pick a bus. We don't need anything too fancy, it's not a huge town, so that looks kind of fun. And you can always rename I usually rename the lines to be something related to the town, so Bangor Bus. And we'll send it on its way. And out of the depot, there it goes. So if we look at if we hold down V, we've covered most of the town. Looks like this part isn't covered so well. Between the train station and all the bus stops. If we look at the stop itself, and we look at the details, it tells us what lines make a stop at this train station, or this station in the game. So now that we've added the bus, it's truly multimodal, so it has a rail connection, or a couple rail connections, and now a road connection. So it lists that bus as one of the things that stops here, and it lists the passenger train and the two freight trains. So line 1 was the first freight train, line 3 was the passenger train, and line 4 was the other freight train that we made. Alright, let's say we want to expand further. Let's say we wanted to add another rail line to go from this town out to, we'll pick this close by town here. So let's consider that as an idea. Well, we'll probably have to do some terrain modifications here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it to the south here, if there's such thing as south or east or west. And what I'll do is I'm going to extend the platforms. So I think we had this and that. So again, as long as the additional stop I create is adjacent to tiles that currently mean that it's a stop. So I'll select, that looks kind of interesting. Let's use this one. So there we go. I created another platform that's on a completely different orientation than the other ones. So any train that stops here will also be part of the same stop. And similarly, we'll give it a go up here for this little town. So we'll fill in the road a little bit more. We'll add this fancy bus stop there to match the rest of the train station. And we'll put up some bus stops. Small town, so we don't really need too many here. Add a depot. Make a new line. Oops. All right. And it's off. If we wanted to further develop this intersection, for example, we would add could add more room for the other train to for the freight train that goes in this area to stop before it reaches the intersection. Let's see this one. And we're gonna also edit the line so that it fills up at that stop also. Not the most profitable of lines, especially yet. Now we just added the bus, or the bus is at each endpoint, so that'll increase the reach of our passenger network. Typically, when I start a new map, I start with freight and make a stable, profitable freight network, and then add passenger to that. But for these examples, it was pretty easy to pick either or to illustrate the station example and also the signal examples. Alright, I think that's it for now. Definitely leave any comments or suggestions.